Got it. Okay, it's wrong one. Okay, so start off with quizzy questions. We don't spend a lot of time on quizzy questions, but it's a way for us to do a quick review. If you guys aren't quiet or participating, then we won't do them. It's pretty simple, okay? We will be looking at our current kind of time frame, so just so that you're kind of aware of what's coming. But we will ultimately go back and recover everything. So it won't just be like some stuff, okay? And they're concept based, so you kind of have to give me a little bit more information than just like shouting a name at me or something like that. But you'll kind of figure out how it goes as we go through it. Does that make sense? Okay? And we'll spend the least amount of time on Wednesday doing this just because it's a short day and we have lots to get through. So, all right. What is the major impact of Locke on the colonies?
The social contract concept and the pieces of government.
Okay, so explain what you mean by social contract.
The social contract is the idea that we each give up some of our own rights so that we can all work together in society to guarantee the rest of our rights.
Okay, you have something to add? Heads up.
We used his entire speech on his two treatises on government to write our Declaration of Independence.
Yes, quite right. I'm not a baseball coach or a basketball coach, right? I'm a swim coach, so go with it. Okay? If I throw something at you and it doesn't go anywhere, that's why. What is the impact of the Navigation Acts on the colonies?
It limits our trade severely, and then it makes the economy suffer for it.
Yep. Ash, do you have something to add?
Because of the Navigation Acts, a lot of smuggling takes place, which leads to tension with custom officials.
Very good. Okay, did you have anything else to add?
It created made more power and authority for Britain because they were the only ones getting goods from colonies.
Yeah, it begins to narrow the scope of that idea of salutary neglect, right? It begins to remove some of that. Okay? Bacon's Rebellion.
As a result of Bacon's Rebellion, the lower class of people got more rights, and instead of using indentured servants, the planters now started to use more and more African slaves.
Yes.
It shows the divide that will continue out throughout Southern culture in high class versus low class.
Yeah, it gives that division. And here's how I tell students to remember Bacon's Rebellion. You serve Bacon. Bacon's Rebellion ends in indentured servitude. Okay, so you serve Bacon. All right, so hopefully it make that easier for you to remember. Well, maybe some of you don't eat bacon, but you would, whatever, just go with it. What is the impact of the Glorious Revolution on the colonies?
Gives us the idea that if the government's not treating us right, that we can overthrow it to rule ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What was the result, long-term result, of the John Peter Zenger case?
It's for freedom of the press.
Yes, it establishes the idea of freedom of the press within the colonies, and then ultimately it's adapted into our Constitution, right? What is the cause and effect of the First Great Awakening?
There's a revival in the practice of Christianity, and there was also sort of a schism in Puritan group from New Lights and Old Lights.
Yeah, so the cause is a schism, right, okay? And also people moving farther into the backcountry, which made it more difficult to maintain these established churches. And the effect is a greater diversity of faith, but also an increase of faith within the colonies, okay? What is the Albany Plan? This will be our last one.
It was the plan to unite the colonies and work kind of against the Iroquois Confederation, nation they're all protected.
Yeah, it was the first idea of, hey, colonies, we should like be together and not like separate, right? And yeah, join or die, and it fails miserably. But we didn't die, but just the plan fails, so. Okay, moving on to our notes for today. So you guys get how quizy questions work? It's not just a straight memorize this fact, it's like a cause-effect relationship, something else like that, right? So, and my hope is that helps you to maintain some of that information, but also helps you to build upon that information. All right, so we are moving into chapter 5, reform, resistance, and ultimately revolution. Okay?
Dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, dun. Okay, so if we think about it, we are on this path, right? We are on our way towards Declaration of Independence and the ultimate revolution. Okay? So we're going to try to add some things to this as we go through this information also. Post-French and Indian War, there's a great fear that the war is going to bankrupt England, okay? And that they're not going to be able to survive. If they can't afford with the products that they need, if they can't maintain that wealth, then ultimately it also means that they won't be able to maintain control over their colonial possessions. You have to understand that England at this point in time, which I kind of found an answer to your question about when does it become England versus Great Britain, is it's not until like the 1890s-ish when it becomes like Great Britain, okay? So it's not this time period. So I'll try to maintain calling it England, but if I call it Great Britain, tomato, tomato, okay? All right, so, but there is this great fear that we are not going to be able to maintain this control. And you also have to understand that within England itself, King George, right, he is a mere 22 years old. He's hot-headed. He is not a very stable leader. He wants things his way, and he doesn't care about really anybody else, okay? So much so that you will see him replace leadership frequently because he simply has a disagreement with somebody that about something, and most times pretty trivial. So he is not somebody who is very level-headed by any means whatsoever at all. And he opposes any kind of colonial government. He also opposes any kind of compromise. Okay? But because the colonists were so instrumental in ending the French and Indian War, the colonists also believe that they have a little bit of a standing ground, okay? That had it not been for the colonists, had it not been for Washington for that matter, that the British regulars would have lost against the French and the Indians, who quite frankly knew the land a lot better than the British regulars. It's really only because of Washington that the British have a strategic advantage of any sort, okay? But he also wants them to pay, okay? And so he brings in a new prime minister, a man, the first prime minister shortly after the French and Indian War, a man by the name of George Grenville, okay? Now this will be one of 5 different prime ministers within 10 years. At this point in time in England's history, the king is appointing that prime minister. Does that make sense? It is not an elected official.
Okay, so this prime minister is like kind of like part of the House of Nobles, so?
Yes, yes, okay?
Do we need to know George Grenville?
No, so it's just part of the story. Does that make sense? I mean, yeah, whatever, okay? But Grenville basically says, look, colonists, you are going to start to pay for your own protection. As far as they're concerned, they believe the colonists caused this war. And they caused this war because they decided they had to move into the back country. So this war is your fault. So since it's your fault, you are going to pay for it. Think about this historically. How well does it go when we like blame a particular country and say it's their fault and make them pay for it? Probably not the best of ideas, right? But, you know, we can always make that comment because we can look back on things where they maybe can't so much, okay? But he not only says you're going to have to pay for this, he basically says that the war cost the crown 150 million pounds, okay?
That's it.
And on top of that 150 million pounds, he believes that the colonists should not only have to pay that 150 million pounds back, but they should have to pay it back with interest, okay? So you're gonna be paying me and then paying me, kind of a deal, right? Well, from the colonist perspective, and if you look at this, and look at the cost of the interest alone on this debt was basically half of England's national budget. So England is basing its wealth, or its ability to create and regenerate wealth, off of the colonists paying taxes. And the colonists up to this point, FYI, really, with the exception of the Molasses Act, have not paid taxes in major portions to the crown. One of the benefits of being a colonial and not in England is that you didn't pay major taxes. Okay. But now the crowns are going, no, you are going to have to. And they also argue that we won this war despite the colonial help, not because of the colonial help. So in other words, you guys sucked at fighting, colonials you did. It was all the crown that won this.
Yeah.
So, haha. And as you can about imagine, the colonials not only are pissed about this idea of having to pay for their own defenses, and as Grenville says, you are going to keep and pay for 7,000 men to be headquartered in the colonies for your own protection. But you're also gonna pay us back in the taxes, right? Here's the thing, where do you put 7,000 men?
In the civilians' houses.
In the homes of the civilians. Because why build a fort? That would cost England more money. Or we can make the colonists build a fort. That works too. But either way, the colonists are going to have to directly pay for these 7,000 men being in the colonies from England. But again, as Granville says, look, it's for your own protection, so deal with it.
That's why it's in the Constitution, it can't quarter troops.
Yes, it is.
Like
Okay,
a-
very good connection there. It is exactly why it's in the Constitution that you cannot, and it is not in the Constitution, it's in the amendments, but it's the Fourth Amendment that says there will be no quartering of troops in private civilians' homes.
Must have been a big deal back then.
Okay? It is a big deal. Okay? Because these individuals came over and took over your homes, and in some cases, they actually took your house. And you moved, and you lived somewhere else.
Oh, I thought they just like.
Even if it meant you lived in the barn while they lived in your house. If you can about imagine about how this would go over in today's America.
It'd be kind of like a big deal. Like, I don't know. I think it'd be pretty cool to have some Navy SEAls living with us.
You guys.
I would I'd totally host a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. I don't think so, right? And that's pretty much about exactly how it would go,
Oh,
right?
sure, American
They
people.
also, because of the proclamation of 1763, they're going to have to regulate anybody moving and trying to move farther west. They're going to have to prevent that movement. But as more people come to the colonies, and because of inheritance rights, people are going to want to
Get land.
move west, because if you're not the firstborn son, well, sucks to be you, okay? You're gonna have to figure it out on your own, and that's the legitimate truth. So either you go and figure out a trade, maybe you can become an apprentice to a blacksmith or something like that, or you move and you find your own land. Well, the problem is if you can't go past the proclamation line of 1763, where the heck do you go? Right?
Go past it.
Okay? Well, that's exactly what you're gonna do. You're gonna be like, oh, there's a line here?
I forgot.
It's not like there's an actual line. It's not like they took like spray paint and drew on the ground.
So I thought the equator was like.
Put like, they didn't put like, you know, a fence up to say don't go past this line or anything else like that. And in fact, because of surveying techniques, they didn't really know specifically 100% where this line was. It pretty much kind of followed a river. But other than that, like, it wasn't very clear as to where the proclamation line was. Does that make sense? So of course, people moved. Why not? Why wouldn't you, right? But this idea of you cannot do it only creates greater and greater tension between the colonists and the English that are there. The only solution is to pass a series of taxes and laws to help the colonists pay back these debts, okay? But the colonists, not wanting to pay taxes, including individuals like Sam Adams and Paul Revere and others, why should I pay a tax to England for this product when I can smuggle this product via France and I have to pay tax? So you're also going to see an increased smuggling in the colonies as colonists try to do anything and everything they can to avoid paying taxes. Another American idea, we still hate paying taxes.
Oh, how about avoiding the
Okay,
tax rate?
imagine that, okay? But what we see come up then is a whole series of programs under Grenville. And it's not important necessarily that you write down every piece of this, but just understand the overall trend. So in 1760, we see the passage of the writs of assistance. We've got 1763, the Proclamation Line, the Sugar Act in 1764. In 1769, we have the